So today I want to talk about why some biracial people, especially black-white biracials, invalidate other mixed race identities. One of the biggest reasons is a feeling of mixed erasure. Basically, people do not want their identity erased or intruded upon by other people who aren't like them. So when someone says the word mixed, what do you picture in your mind? When someone says the word biracial, what type of person do you picture in your mind? Usually it is a black, white, mixed, or biracial person. And as a result, the other types of mixed people suffer. In this particular space, I've seen biracial people kind of arguing with other mixed people. And one of their biggest issues with other mixed people is they're claiming that, multi-generationally mixed people are much more black identified. But that seems to be like a very bogus type of statement, because you could be really light, you could be nearly white passing. I mean, you could be totally all the way to someone almost unambiguous, and you can be black identified. And in the reverse, you can be those same complexions, almost white passing all the way down to unambiguous black, and be completely white identified. So there's no hard and fast rules about how multi-generationally mixed people are going to act. What it really looked like is the people who were arguing over this topic really had just limited understanding of what MGM person was. They also had a limited understanding of history and of all of the different mixed race groups throughout the United States, of which there are many. So just being born a first generation person without that connection to any type of history just pushes them into a certain mind frame where, they desire to be a part of a community. They go into the black community often. They get burned because people feel like, where are you coming from with these ideologies? They leave the black community, then all of a sudden, there's just this bitterness over people who are black and black identified and people who are slightly blacker than them. So that's really one of the biggest issues. But then you also have just this sense of entitlement too with some people, and just their feelings of personal power at destroying the works of others to position themselves above others or place themselves at the center of the movement. So when it comes to people who are biracial, somehow they feel like they're the only legitimately mixed people, and they try to spin this narrative to prevent other mixed people from entering their spaces, because to me, some of them maybe are just terrified of what they will learn about themselves and what they'll come to understand, which is that, you can have a completely integrated mixed race identity. You don't have to be all the way on one side or all the way on the other. But again, people want to make mixed race spaces sometimes all about being biracial. And I think it's a really bad idea as someone who's mixed race, because anybody of any country mixed with somebody from another country can be biracial. I mean, you can have Chinese mixed with Greek, and that's biracial. You can have, Nigerian mixed with Malaysian, and that's biracial. None of these people have anything in common. So when you're talking about someone who's Caribbean mixed race or African American mixed race, you're really talking about a set of identities that are already established, and you don't need to reinvent the wheel as a mixed race person. You already have an identity. You just have to grow into your identity and not reject who you really are just out of fear of, some of the issues that are within the black community, as well as some of the issues in the white community. But another thing I want to talk about is how of course, when two biracial people have children, their child is an MGM. So you really can't have an identity without going from generation to generation. So in other words, MGM people are the identity. Okay, when you're biracial, you just happen to be a person of two different races. MGM people are the identity. So the group that you have to work on and work with is the MGM group. Unfortunately, a lot of the MGM group has been trained in the United States to identify solely as Black. And a lot of mixed race people have a problem with that. They feel they want their identity to be much more embracing of both their heritage or their multiple heritages. But at the same time, that would take a lot of work, and in order for people to do that work, you'd have to have people being cooperative. That includes the men. For some reason, there are or have been some men in this space who've just been completely uncooperative, terrorizing. See if I can think of some other good words. Just completely nasty in this space towards other people who are mixed race. And it makes it hard to even talk about the topics. I think a lot of people are just really exhausted and really tired. They didn't come to this space to be beat down by these different men, and yet these men don't seem to understand what it is they're doing. They're completely narcissistic. All they want is attention. They'll make tons and tons and tons of videos talking about nothing, just for clicks, for likes, for views, but basically they're really just exploiting the space, because the space is not about, clicks and views, bashing Black people for views, bashing the white community, or getting back at anybody. The space is really just to start developing that identity, start recognizing where mixed race begins and Blackness ends. We also aren't looking to be identified as white or white adjacent. So these are some things that, in mixed race spaces have to be worked out, but the space is never going to get off the ground if we have people who are just purely exploiting the space just for clicks and views. But again, the topic of my video is why, some of these groups, biracial group in particular, and not all of them, of course, just a small group, but just some biracials were just really trolling all of the other groups. And it just made it really difficult to talk in the space. And then I noticed that, they spend a lot of time making all these videos talking about mulattoes and so on and so forth. But what will be the purpose of making those videos if you can't acknowledge the issues with the different people who are mulatto? Maybe they're second generation or third generation, but if you can't acknowledge the issues they're facing, then what would be the purpose of even having these discussions? And I even seen people ask a lot about people's appearance. Well, what do you look like? They want to make sure that you have a mixed race phenotype. In some ways, this is fine, because you do have a lot of people who do not have a mixed phenotype, who want access to mixed spaces, and then they want to argue with everyone about their phenotype. That makes people worn down too, because really when you're talking about some of the experience you have as a mixed person, it's a discrimination you experience based on your phenotype. Nobody is asking you who your mother or father is to pull out your ancestry DNA sheet or your 23andMe sheet. They're talking about the experiences you're having in your daily life because you look a certain way, which is usually, the Black mixed with Asian, or Black mixed with white, or Black mixed with indigenous. People are asking you, based on these experiences, how discrimination is affecting you. So if you look like a purely white person, it does not make sense to entertain these discussions or to get angry at other people, because they're saying, well, you're really not a part of this discussion, or you're really not a part of what's going on here. But there are some people who try to use that line on everybody who is not first generation biracial. Oh, you're really not a part of this discussion. You really don't belong in this group. And that's very problematic, because without verifying people's identity, you don't know who belongs in what group. And of course, we can't have identity verification, can we? Because there's so many people who are gung-ho about doxing in this space. Doxing is a huge issue in this space, and it makes it nearly impossible for some people to want to put their information or put themselves out there. And it's just unfortunate that it had come to this point, but that is where we are at. So with that being said, I would like to end the video here, and please share your thoughts with me. What do you think about these people who are really gatekeeping the word mixed and want it to be all about being biracial and want being biracial to be the sole identity of the people in the golden sphere? Let me know in the comments.